University is a big jump for people with dyslexia, and the workload is 10 times bigger than it is at college. You have to do more independent learning and studying, and people with dyslexia struggle with this. The Higher Educational Statistics Agency say in the year 2013 and 14, 25,270 undergraduate students had some form of specific learning difficulty. Janet Godwin writes in her book Studying with Dyslexia, "Being dyslexic does not mean you're not as bright as other people. Just that you learn differently. You can be clever and dyslexic. Dyslexia does not determine your intelligence." In 2009, Sir Jim Rose wrote in his report identifying and teaching children and young people with dyslexia and literacy difficulties. Dyslexia is a learning difficulty that primarily affects the skills involved in accurate and fluent work, reading and spelling. The University of Leicester say Sir Jim Rose is an educationalist. In the world of primary education, in England and Wales, he is the leading educationalist. At university, dyslexia is never far away. Dyslexia means different things to different people.
Dyslexia to me means learning differently. And I think we've all got aspects of dyslexia, depending on what pressure we're under, where your short-term memory may not be working because you're overloaded with information. But dyslexia to me, for the amount of time that I've been here, is that most of the dyslexic students are very creative. So they can actually think outside the box. But what they don't realise is those strengths that they've got.
To me, it means having to think a little bit harder about something or putting a bit more thought into my work. I guess it also means that it is a learning disability, so it's a impairment.
Dyslexia is when there are specific difficulties with literacy. It doesn't affect the other areas of their cognition. No two dyslexics are ever the same, which is the problem we get with research, is no two are ever the same.
On an individual basis, my partner suffers from dyslexia. So I see that in many different places throughout our everyday life. And it can be quite amusing and entertaining, not in a ridicule way. But dyslexia is something that is, part of my everyday life.
To me, it's sort of part of my identity, really. It's sort of part of my image as a person. It's quite a weird thing. Everyone knows that I've got dyslexia.
Being a student at university with dyslexia, I can relate to the struggles and I understand how students with this learning difficulty are feeling and have felt. Now I'm coming to the end of my third year, I'm so proud of how far I have come and what I have achieved. Every student feels differently when they are first diagnosed. I spoke to students at university who have dyslexia, how they first felt and how they manage university with this difficulty. Janet Godwin also writes in her book, Little and Often, an effective dyslexic learning style. The best way for a student with dyslexia to learn is to find different strategies that suit them to manage their work and the pressure of university. I spoke to Dr. Anna Pitt, who is a postdoctoral researcher researching into learning difficulties at the University of Oxford. Within the university, she identifies those who have specific learning difficulties and helps them with their disabled students allowance application. She works with children, teenagers and adults. I asked Anna why is it so important to find strategies for people with dyslexia.
The strategies that people can be taught to use their strengths rather than get stuck behind their weaknesses can allow them to reach their potential. There are an awful lot of very high achieving dyslexics out there, and very few of them have gone the normal route.
So you've just said there are high achieving ones. So have you heard of many success stories with the students graduating, and are you able to share some of these success stories with us?
There are people who've made it through university at Oxford. I'm one myself, where the difficulties have been put aside by having learnt strategies so that they can cope, can get support, can be enabled to reach their potential. And I've known an awful lot of success stories, both in University of Oxford and other universities around the world.
One of your interests is auditory deficit of dyslexia. So what is this and why is it one of your interests?
There's lots of theories about dyslexia. Some people believe that it only manifests at the word level. The research I've done into tonal discrimination, auditory memory, and things like that suggests that it comes from deeper than that. If you have difficulty discriminating between two frequencies or picking up the rhythm, or discriminating rhythms, amplitude modulations, things like that, which are quite fundamental auditory processes, then that will affect your ability to discriminate phonemes, or your ability to discriminate between a b and a d, which are ultimately very similar in their sound patterns. So I've been looking at things like using music as an intervention for literacy learning and things like that.
So that's really interesting. Another one of your interests is how different levels of education impact on dyslexia. So I'm looking at dyslexia at university. What have you found from your research about students moving from a college up to a university level, and how has dyslexia affected this?
So one of the things that we find with university students, quite a few are assessed and identified as dyslexic for the first time. They maybe were able to cope with the elements of learning when they were at school, when information was provided. In a university setting, you're far more just provided with the information and you're asked to learn it. So you've really got to know the ways in which you will learn best, because the learning becomes far more an individual process that you're doing on your own. You've got to be able to fully break down the tasks that you're doing to make them manageable for yourselves. Often the pieces of coursework that you're being given or deadlines that you've been asked to meet are far, far further away. So people have to know how to micromanage their time. They've got to be able to take a large task and break it down into smaller ones.
If a person is struggling, why is it so important that they seek help from their university?
I think that's a very good question. Some people manage to learn and accommodate for themselves. So some people don't seek help. But if you seek help and you seek help early, you can stop things before they snowball. Things are much, much harder to correct once they feel overwhelming. And if you have people in place, so a lot of the specialist support available at universities is just to make sure that people don't let it become overwhelming.
Having dyslexia does not mean you cannot do well or achieve great things. There are many famous people with dyslexia that go on to do great things. People such as Jim Carrey, Albert Einstein, Cher, Muhammad Ali, Pablo Picasso, Richard Branson, and even Walt Disney. Some of them did not even go the normal route to achieve their success, but having dyslexia does not stop you doing anything. Stu Wallace has dyslexia and he has overcome some big challenges along his way. He has now graduated from university and is an advert and audio producer. When did you find out you were dyslexic?
Well, I wasn't really properly aware of what the ramifications of dyslexia were until I was about 13, but my parents knew when I was about 7, but I wasn't really aware of what dyslexia was properly until I was about 13 when I went to a specialist school.
How did you first feel when you found out? What were your thoughts?
I've never thought of it as a big issue. To me, it's just something that's part of me, and I don't make it a big deal. I think it affects the way that I work, so I've become really super organised in the way that I do everything.
And that's cool that you've got strategies to organise yourself. So as well as on uni work and work where now you have a job, does dyslexia affect you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, in my job I have to write a lot of adverts. I write probably about maybe 10 scripts, 12 scripts a day. I have to get them checked by my boss before I send them to a client, because a few times I've sent ones where I haven't had them checked. They haven't made sense, or a word's is missing, or there's a couple of grammatical errors or a spelling mistake.
Has dyslexia affected you when you were finding a job? Did you have that difficulty because you are dyslexic?
Sometimes it does. When you apply to big organisations, you kind of have to disclose straight away that you've got a learning disability. I have to be really careful in what I put in a letter to apply to a job, because if it doesn't make any sense, then they're going to think that I'm lazy or stupid. Even though you were quite young when you first found out about that you had dyslexia, from then until now, do you feel like you have overcome some really big challenges? And if so, what were they? Oh, definitely. I think, as my mum and dad always say, and I think all my family kind of say it, that the biggest achievement for me was actually getting through uni. But little achievements as well, like I only just learned to remember my home phone number, and that took me ages to learn. And I think I learned that like last year or something. I'm 20. I'm 21 now, but like that was a big achievement, and it would be really silly to someone, but like learning that for me was massive.
Oh, that's really good, and it's nice that something so small to everyone else has been a big challenge to you.
Yeah, like even my brother's got a weird spelt name. His name's Craig. It took me years to learn how to spell his name properly, just because I would always get the A and the I the wrong way round. And when you give a birthday card to your little brother and he doesn't really understand that you can't spell something, you can't spell his name correctly, he goes, "Oh, you lazy." But it's like a family joke some of the times when I send something that doesn't make any sense. So everyone kind of has a bit of a joke about it, which is fine.
It's nice that they're supportive and they can make you feel slightly better about it. So when you were at university, how did the university support you?
You had to apply to the DSA, which is Disability Service Assessment Grant, and then that provided me a big lump of money, which went to paying for tutorial support. So I used to see a tutor every week when I was at uni, and they would go through my essays with me to check that they made sense or help me plan how I was going to research and stuff like that. But then also I got provided with a laptop with all the software I would need. So I had specialist software like dictation software and reading software. Also, going to someone that's not associated with your degree is really helpful, and that's something that the uni gave me.
Oh, that's good. And then how did your university, in what way did your lecturers support you?
All of them. The first lecture that I had with every lecturer, I made them aware of my issue. So some of them would say, "Okay, that's not a problem." A couple of lecturers actually went, "Oh no, I've got dyslexia as well," one of my tutors said, "Oh, my partner's got dyslexia, and they don't make any sense either, so I'll be able to help you."
Jameson and Morgan write in their book Managing Dyslexia at University, a resource for students, academic and support staff. The lack of specific instructions on what to do between lectures, coupled with being expected to hand in as many assignments for different modules in virtually the same time, can come as quite a shock. Students with dyslexia struggle to manage with all the information that is being passed on to them during lectures. Different lecturers have their own way of supporting their students with this learning difficulty. Jo Warburton has first-hand experience of dyslexia. Jo is a lecturer at the University of Chester, and I spoke to her about how she supports her students.
Well, I will try and do whatever it is that they will find helpful, and everybody has different needs. Every dyslexic student is affected in a unique way, because it is a unique situation for the individual. It's classified as dyslexia, but quite often that means a whole range of different things, and everybody, it's a bit like a fingerprint, it's a bit like somebody's face. It is individual.
So do you not find out if a student's dyslexic unless they disclose it to you?
Yes, I find out as a module leader, as a personal academic tutor, if a student's dyslexic, if they have disclosed that to the university and they agree that that disclosure can be distributed to personal academic tutors, module leaders, that sort of thing. When we get the learning plans through, they're very general, and they don't necessarily give the detailed specifics that would help that particular individual.
Did you get any training from the university about dyslexic students and how to give them the right support and what support to give them?
I decided to take some training. It was available. It was something that I was interested in. On an everyday basis, lecturers are not trained to handle dyslexia, dyspraxia, whatever's going on. We are given general advice. We're able to ask people for help, ask for their advice.
Do you think that the university should offer training or additional support for lecturers to help students with dyslexia?
It's a really difficult question, that, because The university has support systems and support mechanisms in place, and we are trained to at least be able to spot when things are not going right or when something quirky might be happening. People can come to us and say, do you work with this student? What's going on there? And because it's a small campus, it's not perhaps necessary to train everyone, but to just raise lecturers' awareness of what's going wrong and how to refer through.
So, have you had any success stories with pupils who have, who in your first year they had dyslexia and then now they've gone on to do great things?
There have been a number of instances over the years. There is nearly always one or two every year. I had a student who came in at level 4 who couldn't really write properly. And that student went from marks in the first year from fails and low 40s to coming out at the end of the degree with a 2-2, which for them was a first class honours.
Do not be afraid to ask for help. At the University of Chester, the Student Support and Guidance is there to help students who are struggling. I went to the Student Support and Guidance and spoke to Pam Moss, who is an academic skills tutor and works in SSG under the Disability Support Team, about what support is available for students at university and how they can manage university with this learning difficulty.
The dyslexic students think very differently. Some are highly intelligent, but the challenges that they have is putting it down on paper. So it's the academic style. And I think it's having effective study skill strategies in order to enable them to write academically.
So why is it so important for students with dyslexia to seek help?
Some students are reluctant in the first year to seek help because they want to try and do it themselves. And that's fine, that's not a problem. But it's a different situation than college. And what I don't like to see is students may feel embarrassed to come and see us, and they shouldn't feel like that whatsoever. And I would prefer them to have the confidence to come and seek support. Once the support is put in place, you can see a difference in the way their appearance, they're less stressed, they feel more confident once they have the study skills tuition.
What other support is available for students at the university?
The current state of play is that if they've got up-to-date evidence, then they can access the Disabled Students Allowance. Now that provides funding in terms of technology, because technology and assistive technology is good for all students.
How can the students' lecturers support and help the students?
There's different ways. I think it's recognising for everybody, lecturers and non-lecturers, that we're all different. It's a diverse student population. We all don't learn in the same way. I think it being interactive, a multi-sensory approach to learning, which is seeing, hearing, doing, is a much better way of people to learn.
Dyslexia doesn't just affect students' work, it can affect them emotionally. So what can students do when they encounter this, or what strategies can they?
Anxiety, I feel, is a big concern for some students, because when you put under stress, when you feel tight deadlines, then anybody's anxiety levels come up. And I think it's learning to manage and understand what triggers your anxiety. And I advocate, effective time and task management strategies. The simple strategies actually makes the student feel that they're in control of the situation.
So you meet with dyslexic students on a one-to-one basis to give them support. So do you have any good stories about students with dyslexia that have now gone on to do really, really great things?
Yeah, I have a student, and I remember coming in and in the first year, and she did not want to be dyslexic whatsoever. She'd had a really bad experience at school. Dyslexia was a bad word to her, and I remember her vividly crying and didn't want to be dyslexic. And I had her for 3 years, and she developed so many effective strategies beyond what I could give her, and she came out with a first.
It's not always doom and gloom being diagnosed with dyslexia. There are students out there who have overcome some of their biggest challenges and come out smiling. Callum Ronan is one of those people. He has more than one learning difficulty and has overcome some massive challenges and now knows what strategies he needs to get through his university degree.
Well, I've been dyslexic all my life, but it was mainly through primary school that things started to get flagged up. Teachers started saying something to my parents, and they wanted to put support in place. I did get minimal support, but it has sort of affected me quite badly.
How did you feel when you first found out? What were your first thoughts and feelings?
It's not that I don't really know. To being a child finding out, I think you just sort of accept it really, and you just think, oh, I've just got dyslexia, it's just part of me as a person, and I wasn't angry about it. I might be angry about it some days when I'm trying to write an essay, at university.
How has dyslexia affected you as a person?
It's a difficult one, and it affects my university work quite a lot, especially with essays, because I'm quite notorious around the university that I'm at that I like to write a lot. I like to put a lot of detail in, but when I put a lot of detail in, I sort of put the wrong words in. Sometimes it hurts me a little bit inside, but to me, it's just the everyday basics, really. Yeah.
Moving up from college to university level is a really, really big jump. So how did you manage this jump?
I didn't manage it very well. This is sort of one of the sadder parts about me, really. In my first year, I found the jump quite difficult, both academically and socially, in the changing nature in how work's assessed, in how you have to write things. You can't put I in, or you can't put this and that. It made things quite difficult for me, and it was a big challenge. But now that I'm in my second year, I've done really well. I'm coping much better at writing essays now. I've found strategies now to be able to write essays and be able to develop myself in a way that I won't get tired from writing, say, just 100 words a day on an essay. I can now write about 200, 300 words in a day, which is really good now.
That's really, really good. So you should be really proud of yourself. From when you first found out, I know we said that you were quite young, but from when you first found out until now, what challenges have you overcome?
I've overcome a lot of things. There's some things that I don't often talk about. The fact that I've got dyslexia and I'm on the radio is a fantastic achievement. I know in the business you got to do a lot of writing, but to me, I think being able to combat that and cope with that, especially with other difficulties and other disabilities, to me, I think that's the grand achievement that I've been able to get out of dyslexia, is being able to develop strategies and take it up to the next level, both academically and on a personal level. And I don't think if I hadn't gone to uni, I don't think that would have happened. And it's been difficult, but I think I've coped with it.
How does the university support you?
At the minute, I've got a non-medical support helper and a study mentor who I get to see 2 hours every week.
So what would be a piece of advice you would give someone with dyslexia who is at university level and struggling to manage?
I would go and get yourself checked for dyslexia, get yourself tested, get the support that you need, get a learning inclusion plan together with your student guidance and support or disability department.
I would say, open your mouth, talk to people, make people aware that what your needs are. Some students feel that dyslexia is like a disability that should be hidden away. But again, if we don't know it's there, then they are wasting the opportunity to get the help and support that they need.
I think you need to find your support firstly, and you need to find your support channels, even if that's not official university stuff like getting a grant or getting this proper software. If you've got someone that you can talk to or like help you do your work, that's probably the best thing.
Come and see the disability officer. There's no need to struggle in silence. It's having the strategies, and coming to university is very different to college.
There is absolutely no harm in asking for help.
We've heard from university students, graduates and staff who have shared their perspectives on dyslexia. They have all told us that while it is an issue, they have overcome some big challenges, and these challenges haven't prevented the students from taking full part in undergraduate life and successfully reaching their qualifications. This is becoming easier for students who are taking full advantage of the support that the university offer. Dyslexia might make it hard, but it doesn't stop them, and nor will it me. If you need more information about dyslexia, visit bdadyslexia.org.uk or dyslexiaaction.org.uk.